well, they just started it all of a sudden. But it's like, yeah, but they had 1.6 million Instagram followers. And like, I'll say podcasting's not for those that like, you have to force yourself to do it. Maybe it's not for you. Just from a dollars and cents perspective, I think you can get a lot of content out of a podcast. I mean, whether a client lands on your website and, cares about the pod, doesn't listen to it at all, but they're like, they have 62 episodes about how to clean pools. Like, these guys must know their stuff. There's a credibility aspect that goes along with that. You got to treat the podcast to some degree like a business and like have your ducks in a row here.
What are the benefits you've seen when people actually use high quality production in order to record their podcast?
Yeah, like you said, I think I'll just say, I guess I'll be a little biased, but I think,
What are the things you do to grow your brand? Join me as we take a look at how the best in the business build authority and create true fans through video podcasting. I'm Josh Lewis, and this is Grow Your Podcast, produced by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. Hey, before we get started, I want to just ask, if you find this content valuable, if you think that this is the kind of thing we should keep producing, would you please hit subscribe, like, follow on whatever platform you are consuming this on. We want to create valuable content, and by you liking, subscribing, following, and even sharing this episode, that's going to let us know that we should continue making this kind of content. Thank you so much. Now let's get into the episode. All right, so today we're going to be talking with Tom Brown from the Chicago Podcast Studio and Creator Space, and I'm super excited for you guys to listen to him. Tom is kind of what we would consider the unofficial godfather of podcast studios around the United States. And one of the things I just appreciate about Tom is his experience. He has worked with so many businesses and individual creators in podcasting. And so you're going to learn a whole lot of things from his experience. So let's dive into the conversation. From your perspective, what does a successful podcast look like?
I think, in my time of recording a whole bunch of podcasts, I think, and this will be kind of a theme throughout the rest of our interview, I believe, that I think people come into podcasting expecting one thing and sometimes not pay enough attention to the other benefits that could come from it. We work with a whole bunch of businesses, and businesses view podcasting a little differently than individuals. And I think for whatever reason, though, everybody gets into podcasting, businesses, individuals, with this like, I got to make money somehow. There's going to be a way to make money here. And for a very select few, there will be that. But I think that there's a lot of benefits outside of, direct money from the show that can, pay for the effort that it takes to put it together. So, what makes something good is I feel like if it checks the boxes you want it to do, but I think that, one of the things that I try to do is shift the narrative on what boxes people think the podcast is going to check, and try to educate them on some of the other aspects that could, benefit their business, their personal brand, just their own personal career, whatever it may be.
How do you walk them through kind of figuring out what success should look like for them?
Yeah, I think everybody comes through our doors, again, with an underlying hope that it will make them famous and earn them a whole bunch of money. And I feel like from, day one, whether it's with businesses or individuals, but I think it's more of a trend with, individuals, or what I guess I just call like a retail level client that, kind of wants to come in, have a show about whatever topic, and try to make it as a podcaster. I think those people usually come in with the belief that, again, this could make money at some point, which is, valid, but it's like, I don't know, it's not the first thing that you want to think of. And I feel like anything that you come in where it's like you're expecting some sort of return immediately, again, especially monetarily, it's just a bad mindset. So, for businesses and individuals, we usually kind of not try to extinguish that flame, but we try to be like, listen, like it's it's really tough to make money in podcasting, but the ways that you can make money through podcasting are, we usually, whether it's an individual or a business, it's like this should funnel into your business, right? So Again, I think I've used this example on some other stuff, but let's say you run a pool cleaning business. You would want to do a podcast about, cleaning pools, and should somebody stumble across that, the goal is that they could then maybe potentially hire you, by having the podcast. You look like the authority, you look like you know what you're talking about. Again, I don't know how many people, maybe not the best analogy, but are watching pool cleaning videos, but you get what I'm getting at, where it's just like, it makes sense. And so somebody could listen to that, be like, yeah, okay, Tom knows what he's doing. He's going to clean the crap out of my pool here. And through that, they can decide to make the decision to hire you. And so, you could get hired for that, make some money, theoretically from the podcast. They didn't know about you before. They listened to you, or they saw an appearance that you had on maybe somebody else's podcast, let's say. And you can make money that way. And so for individuals, I try to do the same thing. So it's like a lot of people, if you get into podcasting, there's always a spirit of entrepreneurialism. And so there's usually something else that you do, And so if it's coaching, if it's, making jewelry and stuff like that, like the podcast, I think, should have some sort of route avenue to something that is a little bit easier to extract money from, in the form of a business or a service or something like that. So that's how we try to guide people from, again, I guess just trying to make money. But I think some of the other boxes that I alluded to would be the networking side of stuff. I think that's especially huge. I think it's a common kind of mistake, especially with the retail level people, to interview their friends, their family, their people that are just directly next to them, just because, hey, we got we know each other, and I don't feel intimidated by this conversation. And we always try to tell people to reach a little bit beyond their circle, and as well as like up their circle too. And especially with going to a studio like ours or like yours or something like that, you're usually able to attract maybe a caliber of person that you wouldn't be able to do from hey, can you hop on a Zoom meeting with me? Hey, can you meet me up for coffee? If you kind of, position the podcast and like, hey, you're going to get something out of this too. I'll chop up these clips. I'll make this a fun experience for you too. You might be able to get someone that you wouldn't expect. And so always try to shoot up and a little bit outside of your circle in that category. And then again, going back to the business side of stuff, we see a lot of businesses, interview their current clients, which I think is good, because it helps you kind of build that relationship a little bit more. Maybe they're already spending a whole bunch of money with you, but by taking them out to dinner, by having them on your podcast, it strengthens that relationship. And then again, you could, in theory, maybe we'll do a bigger contract next year with them, and we can make some money that way. But it also, we've seen, firsthand at our studio tons of times where people will come in, interview people that are maybe outside of their realm. This is the first time they're meeting at our studio. They connect. They already have a feeling of reciprocity with this other person because, hey, he brought me on the show. He's doing all this sort of stuff, and they have a meeting. A phone call turns into a business engagement. And so again, it's like if you invite them on, they become a client directly. It's like the podcast helped make that possible, but you didn't get paid from Spotify. And so those are two of the bigger boxes. And I think the third one is, I think what a lot of people are starting to come around to is that, producing content yourself is difficult, sometimes expensive, sometimes, if you script things out, difficult too. And so I think podcasting is a pretty unique medium where it's like, invite someone interesting, have stuff you want to, talk about. Ideally, you guys share mutual interests, and you can record long form, get a whole bunch of content that doesn't feel rehearsed, sculpted, practiced. And then again, utilizing a studio like ours or like yours, you can really get a lot of content done fairly cheaply, and without as much stress ahead of time. So by just recording, having content on hand, I think that's a big value to people. Again, whether the podcast itself blows up, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen this too, that the clips are kind of the foremost thing people are after and interested in. And we have people so much that podcast with us, but they don't have a show at all. Like there's no name. There's just them. They just want the clips, basically. Yeah. And I think that's a valid thing to pursue. So those are the kind of the key areas that I see that you can extract, again, other value outside of directly getting compensated by a platform.
Yeah, no, that's really, really helpful. So one of the things you had mentioned as well was that there's a difference between individuals and businesses. Mm-hmm. What are some of the differences you see? And I'm just curious what you meant by that.
I think one of the biggest differences that I see is the level of preparation. I think a lot of the individuals we see are usually, again, a little bit more short-sighted. Somebody gassed them up, and after a couple drinks at the party, he's like, "You guys should all have a podcast," and they gang together with four other friends, hop on a show, and more or less talk about nothing because they are convinced, or somebody again gassed them up and was like, "You guys are just funny and like you'll do well." And I think we've had plenty of just kind of like everyday podcasts about nothing essentially, and some of them are funny. And I think it's very dependent on the host. I think not that it's like bad information, but I think it's really easy in certain circumstances to get told like, "Oh, you should have a podcast." And as someone that makes a living off of podcasts, now keep that propaganda up into the world. But I'm sure we've all seen the other side of stuff where it's like, not everybody needs a podcast. And so I think a lot of individuals come in, again, they're like, "I want to be like this big podcast that I know. I'm going to invite my 3 other friends that, aren't really super interesting or qualified. We're going to yap over each other for an hour and a half. We're going to post 2-3 episodes. And by the 3rd one, we should hit about 1.6 million views. And then I'll be retired and we'll be official podcasters." And so, I mean, obviously I'm kidding. It never works out like that. I think, we see that the life expectancy from a podcast perspective with individuals is tough just because usually, again, I think for various reasons, one being, the money side of stuff. Again, we work with people that, we kind of cheat the line in the sense that like you can come to us and you can get a really good podcast right away. Yep. And for a lot of people, there's, good value in that. And we see people that come in that, understand that and want to just, skip the doing it over Zoom, filming it on a GoPro and like, your iPhone as your microphone. But it's expensive enough that I think, it hurts a little bit, and there are usually few people that can sustain that for a long time. Again, usually when they realize they're not going to get the results that they wanted initially. I think that first episode, everyone's like, "Oh, you look great. It's, so cool. They got a podcast." But then, you do 2, 3, and again, 2 and 3 were similar to 1 in the sense that you guys just kind of talked about miscellaneous stuff and inside jokes amongst your friend group. And it's like, yeah, you're, 30, 40, 50 friends and family that would maybe click into the link, enjoyed it, but like that's kind of it. You're it's tough. I think again, there's individuals that have more notoriety as far as more social media followers that already have a personal brand that get into podcasting, do well immediately, and everyone looks at them as like, well, they just started it all of a sudden. But it's like, yeah, but they had 1.6 million Instagram followers, and like are professional content creators. Like it kind of makes sense. So. Again, going back to the preparation, I think that usually individuals get into it without much prep, or just, or if they would just approach it in the sense of like, this is like a long haul. Either I'm going to front the money, or maybe I should, self-produce for a while and see how it goes. But even those, again, even if you're just an individual, I'm always like, try to put something in there that you can either make money or that you can extract other value out of. Again, maybe don't interview your friends, interview other mentors you want to potentially have, or, try to reach out to potential employers you'd like to work for, and whatever, like just try to navigate that differently. I think with businesses, they have money to fund it a little bit more, and I can't speak for you guys, but it's funny. We have to try to cater to both sides of the market, and so for one side, it's like, ooh, this is a bit steep, and then sometimes we'll talk to businesses and we tell them, the prices, and they're like, okay, but like, is that all the cameras? Like, are you guys going to be there? Like, what other fees are there? Because it's like way too low. And so, they have the money to do it. So they're usually willing to like, let's do a season. Let's, do a little bit more. In general, one of the terms I thrown around is the right views, not the amount of views. And so I think for businesses, they get that a little bit more. Again, going back to, pool cleaning, maybe a little too niche, but like we have, and I'm sure you guys have experienced too, businesses that it's like, this is a little out there, maybe a little boring, a little dry, but it's like, but for the people that this is going out to, this is probably great information. This is what they want to hear. And, while it's not going to get adopted by the masses, like, even if your video gets 100 plays, and if one of those plays is a potential client and they hire you, it's like, dude, you're good, And so I think businesses get that a little bit more. But going back to the preparation side, we've all seen it where people come in and they have, like, they're almost sentence for sentence, like, welcome to the show, and this is this, and Let me run it back. Let me run it back. Welcome to the show. This is this. And like, everyone's shuffling their papers and like, it's very just like chip chop and they kind of miss the mark a little bit too. And so, it's tough. Again, we try to just, again, go back to those boxes and like, as long as you're checking some of those other boxes, I think that there's, a good way to extract value. I guess I'm trying to come up with like other things. It's like they're oddly similar in a lot of rights that, it's just, everyone's still, I guess, trying to kind of figure it out. I know there's more questions you're going to ask me about like what makes a good podcast and stuff. And you guys have listened to a good chunk of podcasts at this point, and I've been in on hundreds, and we've worked on thousands, and it's still kind of, I don't know if there's a perfect formula out there yet for what completely works, but those are some of the differences that I see, at least between kind of retail level people and businesses.
That's helpful, yeah. And I mean, even as you're talking, I'm like, part of the formula is make sure you're like not just making it for you, but also like realize there's an audience, right? That it feels like that's a little bit of what you're saying. And so I kind of want to just talk a minute about why podcasting, like why. So obviously we've talked about like, other forms of content and things, but like, why is something for the right kind of person, why is video podcasting a good idea? And I would even add over just audio podcasting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you can afford it, which I think everybody can, we're here on Riverside now. You can, with a modern phone, sync up with that, and you can spend $100 on a microphone. And if you want to do a solo show, like, get some natural light, put some shelves behind you, and like you're up and running a little bit more. Or again, I mean, obviously with a Riverside thing like this, you are elsewhere and I'm here, and so I think, I don't want to say that I think audio podcasting in general is like dead. I mean, more power to you if that's what you'd like to do, but I think it's easy enough to have video now. Again, especially just in a like maybe not at the level that we would produce at, but everybody's got a phone in their pocket, and you could do it. And I think just from a social media standpoint and an exposure standpoint, the clip side of stuff and the teases that go along with that, it's like if you really do want to try to grow your podcast, like if you just continue to put out full length episodes, it's really tough. I mean, I'm sure everybody's feed is filled quite often with podcast clips, and there's plenty of podcasts that I feel like I would consider myself a fan of, but have never watched an entire episode through. And that's so many people. And so it seems just like a missed opportunity in my mind to not do at least some sort of video with the podcast.
Because I'm the same way. I can think of a couple different podcasts that I don't know that I've ever listened to a full-length episode, maybe one, but I regularly like and love their clips. Sometimes I share their clips. It's great. So you hit different kinds of people when you actually utilize video podcasting. So yeah, that's well said. Okay, so who are the kinds of people that should actually be doing podcasting? Like who are those people? We talked about what success looks like. We talked about like why the medium. We talked about that there are individuals and businesses, but and you did speak a little bit to like, if it's just you and your buddies, like, okay, like maybe, but like you really do want to be creating for somebody in mind. Who are the individuals or the businesses that you think could most benefit from having a video podcast?
The business owner me will say everybody to some degree. Right. But, and I think one thing I'll say on that initially is because I just had somebody in the studio the other day that with, I'm sure, I believe you guys must have been doing, video work before getting into this space. Yeah. And so we've all dealt with the people that just hate the way they look on camera and hate the way they sound, and they're so self-critical. And like we just had a session with somebody that, a bunch of emails back and forth tripping about the angles of the cameras and this and that. And then we recorded, a short YouTube video. She booked off all this time and did the script like 6-7 times, I thought it went, fine. She was a little dry, but like whatever. Sent it off to her, and I get this email like, I just, had some existential crisis. I just, hate the way I look. I'm gonna go get like speech therapy and all this sort of stuff. And so, I'll say podcasting's not for those that like, if you have to force yourself to do it, maybe it's not for you. I don't want to give off the vibe that you have to be this bright, bubbly, extroverted person to have a, successful podcast. But like at the same time too, like I don't want to hype it up as some, golden opportunity that like if you're physically unwell or like sitting up there shaking in your boots, maybe it's not, for you. But I think if you do have a good personality for it, or a good entertainer, that's great. I think from you had said about, kind of having some sort of audience, I think it's important to be passionate and actually interested in what you are discussing. And we've seen businesses or, individuals kind of like go outside of their, their actual business to interview people in the sense of like, it's not maybe on theme, it's not on like par, but it has actual interest to you. And so, I think you still have to be passionate about it. For example, with myself, for the longest time, everybody would come in like, oh, you must be a big podcast. You must love podcasts. You started a studio. And while yes, I'll say I love podcasts, I didn't have a show for the longest time. And while I, teach people often now that, especially when you're starting a studio, it's like, have your own show and do all this sort of stuff. And obviously you guys have done that. I didn't do that. The smart thing would be to interview other business owners, attract them into the studio. But, we listen to so much. And while I'm, obviously very passionate about business, it was like, I didn't want to do something like that. And so I'm a big watch guy. I love wristwatches, and we've had a bunch of cool people in at the studio, and I have friends outside of, the studio world that are into that. And like, that's my passion. And so I did a show interviewing people about their watch collection. And so, there's no hope of that really turning into anything. It's not strategic for my business by any means, but it's like, it fills my soul, it makes me feel happy. And so it's like, I think that, I would push people to do that. If it feels like a chore, if it feels like something you hate to do, you're doing it not right. What else could I say about people that, kind of do it well? I think, like I said, I think sometimes people prepare too much on what to say, but don't prepare enough on like what it should be about or just like the flow of things. I think sometimes people are quick to, well, hey, the market's decided that, 30 minutes is the best time, so I only want to do 30 minutes. Like we've had people just like, adamant about that. And we've always, from day one, done 90-minute sessions. Usually, people go about an hour, hour and a half. Sometimes people go longer. But I just find there's not like misinformation, and there's some, truth behind that sort of stuff. But again, I think sometimes people, it's almost too strategic. They're just like, well, this is what is efficient. This is this. And if we do this, then this should lead to this. And, maybe it's just the creative in me or just the feel good kind of person, but just like, you should still do something that you're happy about and want to discuss. And so we've had business people come in and talk with other, influential people in the space. And it's like, it's a very sterile conversation and stuff. And it's like, if you guys are both having a good time, great. But like, maybe you could ask some other questions. Like, I'm sure there's probably some questions that you'd like to ask that maybe would not be like on brand or on business, like not too deep type stuff, but you could be like, how do you deal with depression as a high level, entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's a lot of stuff that people won't touch just because I think, they're maybe just misguided on how to do things, or they're so set on like, it needs to be like this and this, and then my numbers will go up. And it's not so much, like that. So yeah, a little bit of back and forth again. Do you want to be prepared? Maybe not too prepared.
Those are some of the people that, should pursue podcasting, have something that you are passionate about. Please don't talk about things that are just going to drain you. And I do think you're right too, again, like as a studio owner, like, yeah, we want everybody to have a podcast, but at the same time, not everybody should have a podcast, especially if you are just like, I just talked with a guy a couple weeks ago, and he was like, if you, like you were saying, if you are physically like not doing okay because you're about ready to be on camera, you should not have a video podcast. Maybe start with audio and then work your way up. But like, please don't just force your way into it. You're going to make yourself and everybody else a little bit miserable.
Yeah.
So Who do you think, I don't know if you're like this. I often will run into people and just see like opportunity for them. So while I don't think everybody should have a podcast, I'm regularly thinking, oh man, they should have a podcast. They should have a podcast. Who do you think, based off of the people that are coming in your studio and just as you're talking to different studio owners and different things, who do you think is missing out on video podcasting? Is there a kind of person or business industry?
Yeah. I think my thought would be that, yeah, it's probably more so businesses. And I think that, we've seen a trend towards that. Again, every individual, like, again, if you want to have one, you can have one. But I think from a business perspective, there's still so many businesses that, are just slow to any sort of new kind of marketing trend. And so, again, going maybe back to the pool cleaning thing, it's like, yeah, how many people care about a podcast about pool cleaning? Not many, but those that care about pool cleaning, it's like, thank God there's a podcast about, like, I'd love to hear about your chemical mix and the different filters that you use. And like, there's a market for that sort of stuff. And again, going back to the right views instead of the amount of views, I think a lot of businesses maybe don't, because they're like, we do like something kind of boring or something like that. And they're just like, whatever about it. But it's like, dude, for certain people, like, that's going to be the bee's knees. They'll want to hear about that. And then again, some of the other boxes, like I said, it's like, I think just from a dollars and cents perspective, I think you can get a lot of content out of a podcast. And usually if you do it right, you don't go in with too much prep. And it's not like you have to, do, an entire content day, bring out a film crew, script out all these, videos and do weird things. It's like, I think it's the like lowest barrier content production. Because again, a lot of people, it's like, if you, do it well enough, you almost forget the cameras are there. And then it's just a conversation between people. And even for people that are terrified of being on camera, by the end of it, they can kind of like, space out from the equipment side of stuff and what's actually happening and just like talk. And I think that is helpful for a lot of people. I think going back to, just the money side of stuff, I think it's still very cost effective. And again, with the trend and industry shifting towards, having just kind of ready to, plug and play spaces like our own here, where you can just come in, drop in and record something. We can edit it, or you could have your own team edit, whatever you want to do. It's a fairly cost effective way to get content out there. And I think for, again, especially with businesses, again, if you have a podcast about pool cleaning, whether a client lands on your website and, cares about the podcast, doesn't listen to it at all, but they're like, they have 62 episodes about how to clean pools. Like, these guys must know their stuff. There's a credibility aspect that goes along with that. And then I know I don't want to jump ahead to one of your other questions about, having something that's professionally filmed, and maybe we'll shelf that as we've kind of been talking about that too. But I think there's a degree of credibility that comes from high quality production. I've been in production my whole life, and so, well, not my whole life, but a good chunk of it, my profession, my adult career. I think naturally I've been trained to say that just because that's my job. But again, going back to even for individuals, you put out this nice multi-camera podcast and everyone's like, oh my gosh, this guy made it. He used to just be on the stoop down the street, but like, look at him now in a big TV studio. Like there's some credibility that comes with all that sort of stuff. And so I think businesses are coming around to it. Again, we have some interesting things as far as topics and what people actually like talk about. But I think for all the reasons I mentioned earlier, it's like kind of a no-brainer. I think it's cost effective. I think the value that you can derive from it is far greater than the cost it costs to do it. And so that's what I'd say.
Are you looking for a place that you can create the content that helps market your brand? Or are you somebody who just needs a space that they can record a podcast, record talking head social content? You want to create a webinar, a course, or other content like that? Take a look at the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. We're a space built just for creators like you. Our studio here in downtown Cincinnati, located right next to all the hot restaurants in OTR, is set and ready for you. We can have up to 4 people in our studio. You can record long form, short form content. It looks awesome. The lights change colors. I mean, even there, hi, in the background. What's up there, guys? We have all the technical amenities to try and help you succeed at creating high quality content. We work on everything from subscriptions to create your own show. We do day rentals so you can create massive volumes of content and we'll just hand you all the footage. And we can even do things like limited time series where you can come in, record a bunch of episodes at one go, and then have that ready for a show to market your brand or your business. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a brand, or an author who's looking to market themselves with high quality video content, check out our website at cincinnatipodcaststudio.com and schedule a tour today.
Yeah, let's dig into a little bit of the production quality stuff since you touched on it. Like, okay, so you did just say there is a certain amount of professionalism that you give off when you actually do it well, whether you have your own team or you hire a studio to do it or whatever. But like, as much as I do want people to like, okay, if you have a podcast, please make sure you record it and like do a video version of it. But why? What are all the benefits you've seen? And again, this is super self-serving for both of us, but like, what are the benefits you've seen when people actually use high quality production in order to record their podcast? Yeah.
Like you said, I think I'll just say, I guess I'll be a little biased, but I think, with that aside, it's just like with anything in life. I think it's just, kind of ingrained in our society. If you see an individual, in tattered clothes, ruffled hair, but if he gets out of a Lamborghini, you're like, there's some legitimacy to this guy. Like you forget the outfit and you're like, well, if that's his car, like he must be doing something right. And in a small way, I feel like, a high quality, anything, production, clothing, accessories, cars, homes, carry weight to them, just, within society. But I guess I'll just go to content itself, right? I mean, we're in the world of like just scroll and, there's varying degrees of quality. And I don't want to give off the vibe that like, if you shot your podcast in 4K versus 1080, like you'll get 20% more followers. Like, I'm not going to throw out information like that. I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think that there's a threshold of, I'd say, acceptable, and then there's a threshold of like, this looks good, as far as I'm, concerned. And I think, again, just from differentiating yourself, if people are going to listen to something or watch something, it should look good. I personally would rather enjoy a podcast that was filmed professionally, looks good, has good editing, than like, a collaborative Zoom meeting where you guys are both on screen and you're on your personal cell phones out in the car. And like, we've had guests that, tune into Riverside as a guest, like from their car. And it's like, what are we doing?
Right.
And so, I mean, I think it again goes back to just a credibility thing. Again, if you have a really good looking thing, it's like, oh, they spent a little bit of money to put this together. They care enough to do this. And so there's, again, you could give the same advice, the exact same podcast at a fancy studio and with great lighting, great cameras, or in your car with the same guests and all that sort of stuff, and record it from just the lap or the audio on the camera, and they're gonna just hit different, so I think, again, if you can afford it, it makes sense to do it. And then going back to the clip side of stuff, I think that is such the bait that people come in off of, and so if those don't look good, it's really tough to get people to convert to like the full length or anything like that. So I think use it to it matters as much as you can like afford to. And like I said, I think if you just want to do audio because you want to be on camera, that's fine. Get a nice microphone, do the thing in your closet or like get some sound treatment, or just don't do it in the hallway. If you do want video, but can't afford to come to a studio, it's like film it on your phone, and your buddy that has a phone too, like get 2 angles. Bring in some set design stuff. Take 2 seconds or take 5 minutes maybe, and like just give a shit. Again, it is my business to push people to come to us, but we get people all the time that, maybe want to self-produce or, hey, if I'm going to spend all this money with you, maybe I could just buy some of my own equipment and make it happen. I'm like, you could go for it. I support you,
totally
I support you doing that. So I think just, quality matters for sure. I think it matters maybe less so at a certain threshold. Again, I think there's like, yeah, this looks good. And then there's like, yeah, this looks great. I think past that, it's maybe it could fall off a little bit, but if you can't afford a crazy studio, it's like you should still just do everything in your power to make it look as nice as you can, because I think it's a good just reflection of the overall quality of the show. Again, if there's a credibility that comes with it, and so I think the most you could do is worth doing.
So again, this again is probably a self-serving question, but for people could instead of spending the money on a studio, they could legitimately go and buy the equipment, lights, all the different things. From your experience and what your clients have said about working in your studio with you, with your team, like what are the benefits of actually working with a studio versus spending all the money on the equipment and doing it yourself?
I think you could just draw a correlation to anything else that's like a do-it-yourself type thing, right? So we just did a renovation on one of our, kind of main sets up in this new space, and it was like, I don't have any construction background. Like I could hodgepodge this together maybe, or I could hire a company to professionally do it. They'd come in and I could, kind of kick my feet up. I think the value with us and what we see a lot of people enjoy is the service side of it. I think that we're all we're there to film, but there's a hospitality aspect to it. And so I think people like that. And even, we work with plenty of people that are, probably capable, one, of building their own studio if they wanted, or filming it on themselves. Maybe they did used to do it. Maybe like we've had people that have, I have somewhat of a home studio. Like we could have done it there, but I think a lot of people like the, like, just drop in and drop out type mentality where it's like, we'll take care of things. I mean, we've all, from people that have self-produced, it's the classic like, I forgot to hit record, or like one of the cameras died and like, I had no idea because I'm busy doing it, and it's like kind of just doing too many jobs. And so I think for people that are big, DIYers, and if you have the money and you've crunched the numbers and you think you're going to go on the long haul here, and you're like, yeah, it's a lot of money if I'm going to do 50 episodes with you guys, it'll be this much. And yeah, maybe you could self-produce, but again, you still have to like physically do some sort of stuff. I don't want to get too into the weeds on like how we do things. I don't know if you guys are as big on the live cut as we are, but like a lot of our clients find value in that. So by doing that live cut, it saves them a lot of time afterwards. Whereas if you're kind of self-producing, and let's say you don't have someone that can click between the cameras, you're losing a little bit of time on the back end there. So I think for people that are the guys that would the idea of building their own patio on the weekend is like a good time. It's like, go ahead, man, watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos, consume some of my content. Look what I did with ours, or anyone else that's put out YouTube videos on how to build a studio, which is plenty of them. More power to you. Absolutely. I think that we just cater to a wider chunk of the market that's like, we just kind of want to have it done for us. It's and you pay a premium for it. It's like that just with anything in life, right. But again, I think for those people, they value that part of it. Not only is it just like, I don't have to worry about, I don't have to set up here every single time. And we had a guy in earlier that was pointing at one of our sets, and he's like, oh, I got something like this at my house for my wife's podcast. Like, we don't have any of the lights or like the cameras or like the background stuff, but we have like these white chairs. And I'm like, okay, like sick. And he's got like a single camera. I know. I was a little like, I wasn't, it was one of those moments where I'm like, I'll just bite my tongue. But, right. I don't think he's going to have his wife come out and do it, but he was explaining to me that he's like, it's a pain every time, because we have to break it down and then we set it up. And he's like, and she always says I screw something up. The camera's too high. The lighting's not right. And it's like, we just avoid that. Our stuff's set up. We know what we're doing. We do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds a year, and we're going to take care of you. And a lot of people just like that. So I think the service part of it's huge. And, one thing, again, maybe not for the core audience, but for you guys, I'll say is I think that there's not a shift within the industry, but I think a lot of people from a business ops perspective, are like, what if we just put the room in there, ISO everything, deliver those, and, we could run multiple at the same time with a one-person crew type deal. And I don't know. I'm not a passionate, but I'm a pseudo firm believer that I think that you physically being there, listening to the show, cutting the show, just making sure stuff goes well, I think is a value to people. I think that they enjoy having that there. I think there are some people, again, that maybe didn't want to be on camera to begin with that are like, oh, you're going to sit here through the whole, you're going to have to listen to this. It's like, yeah, that's our job. But I think the majority of people enjoy feeling a little bit more kind of catered to and taken care of, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the thing you have to weigh is, do you want the peace of mind? Do you want the relief of not having the oh crap moment of you didn't hit record on something? It's like somebody else is monitoring everything, making sure it's all good. And like you said, if we're doing the live switch or whatever, it's like you save so much time. And so that's really, really awesome. What are some of the, I don't know, challenges that your clients have? So whether it's challenges that they had before coming to you, or just some of the things you're seeing them wrestle with. So I'm going to give an example and see if this helps. But so for our clients, right, and it's usually some of those more the individuals, they're wrestling through sponsorships, right, and just okay, how do I get my show sponsored and that kind of thing. What are some of the challenges that your clients, again, either they're coming to you and then you solve them, or right now these are just some of the things you're noticing that people are having to wrestle through as they make a consistent show?
Yeah, and I'll do my best here. I think one of the challenges is, again, just maybe a disconnect of what you're hoping to get out of this and what it's currently doing. I think a challenge would be we're 4 episodes in and we're not getting thousands of views. That's, it's a problem that didn't really exist. Whereas the other side of it is, you could be 50 episodes in having a really good time. Maybe you're not seeing the numbers you want, but you could be happy and content. There could, in theory, be nothing wrong with what you're doing. Maybe you're not getting the exposure you want, but as long as it checks what you want it to check, then I feel there's really no problem at all. I don't think that there's this again, going back to this just perfect formula for a podcast, that if you don't have, this at the beginning and you don't break halfway through to do an odd segment about what's your favorite color type stuff, you're gonna lose out on anything. If you're not doing short form, you're screwing something up. There's only really a problem if you have a problem, I would say, with it yourself, I guess. I think, sponsorships, we have few clients that have any sort of stuff like that, and usually they're different recorded segments. It doesn't really end up getting to us too much. But I guess on the topic of sponsors, I think, again, going back, I think everyone's just got unrealistic expectations about who's going to approach them, and everybody, again, watches massive podcasts. And I'll even go back to, again, in production, it's very common for a brand to come to you and we'd like a commercial for our product. Cool. And then they'll send you the Apple Ultra Watch commercial or something like that. We want it to look like that, but we have $0 to kind of make it happen.
Right.
It's, that people can have kind of a similar mentality with the show itself. And so from a sponsorship perspective, we always tell people just reach out to people yourself and ask. If you wait around for people to ask you, it probably won't happen. Right. Try to find stuff that is actually related to the show itself. Again, if you're a pool cleaning podcast, reach out to chemical companies, reach out to the companies that make the filters. They're probably maybe have some marketing dollars, and HelloFresh is not going to reach out to you when you have 300 followers on YouTube, and it just doesn't make sense. And so don't sit on your heels when it comes to that. Reach out to maybe some local businesses, and even if it's a small amount of money, I think it's still what it stands for means something, right?
Yep.
And while we don't get involved on that side of stuff, we've had times in individuals that, seems like it's a pretty good deal. And I think there's a lot of brands that, again, with the trending, nature of podcasting, there are brands that are used to spending a whole bunch of money that want to spend less on TV, and they want to start doing this with podcasts. And like, you'd be surprised at who you could maybe get in front of. But again, if you wait on your heels, it probably won't happen. So be proactive, reach out to them, have some sort of deck, I think is a good thing to do. That, again, we, coach those that ask about it on with some sort of, kind of offer package type deal. Cause you just want to be prepared. Nobody wants to, yeah, we'd like to sponsor the show. Oh, okay. Well, and if you got nothing to say there, this is just like, you got to treat the podcast to some degree like a business and like have your ducks in a row here. What other problems, do I see people struggle with? I think, going, I guess, back to the equipment side of stuff, it's like I want to start a podcast. I want it to be beautiful and well put together, but I don't know how to do it. And it's like, okay, then you kind of need to go with us. Like if you're a big DIYer and like you want to learn not only about the equipment and like set design and then like editing and cameras, it's like, it's so much that it's like, that doesn't make sense. And so that's a problem. I think a lot of people, we get emails just like you, I'm sure, where it's just like, I want to get into podcasting. How do I do it? And again, as a business owner, I'm like, well, come to us. But it's like the truth. It's like, even if you come here 1-2 sessions, you'll have like a better understanding about just like how this all works. And you'll realize that like, okay, to do it at this level is really difficult and not something I want to do. And again, it doesn't need to be that way, with programs like Riverside or with any stuff. Like it's not super difficult to come out with something, but it is a little difficult to come out with something that's beautiful. What other potential problems? I'm trying to just rack my brain for what people see. I think that there's a lot of different aspects to running a show that people don't want to do, frankly, and sometimes us included. So everybody likes the recording. Nobody really likes the editing. And usually people don't really like the publishing and putting it out there and, the actual marketing. And I think, before I got into this side of stuff, I had a music studio. And I think one of the, kind of biggest lessons that I learned was that people love making music. They don't like promoting it. And promoting it is 90% of the job. And so people, they want to film the podcast. They had a good time doing that. They posted up one time and with the caption like, check out my shit. And, and then you get a handful of likes and it's like, and then they're like, well, how come it didn't get 10,000 plays? It's like, well, what'd you do with it? Did you make clips? Nah. Did you, did you give a shit? No. Sorry to be cussing on your show, but,
No,
it's, I think that's just, I guess the kind of the biggest problem that I see is people are just very short-sighted, with it. But I guess on the flip side of that too, like I don't want to spread the whole thing of like, you got to give it 20 shows before you give up. Like obviously, if you want to do something, you should do it. You should spend more than like 2-3 times. And I'll find people often will have spent no time like kind of practicing, learning how to be a good host, coming up with good questions, but they'll have spent 3-4 days on like their logo, or like the name of the show, which obviously is important, but like sometimes again, people are so fascinated with the not important stuff and just don't want to do the actual labor of like, okay, promote the show, reach out to brands for sponsorships, do this, do that. A lot of people like doing the fun stuff and not doing the not so fun stuff, which is, a classic problem. But I think that's one of the things that I see, and that's what kind of differentiates people is like, you got to do some of the back end work.
Yeah. Who have you seen? You don't have to name specific shows, but like, what are the things that you've seen that the people who do well with promoting their show? What are the kinds of things you've seen them do?
I think there are definitely some, kind of more mainstay, trendy, easier exposure stuff. And so, we've had, I think there's a decent amount of people that just talk about like pop culture or current events. And so I think that is, while not totally my cup of tea, is value to people. I think a lot of people look for commentary on what's happening right now. And then we've seen it firsthand from just a, I guess like a virality perspective that like, again, a clip about pool cleaning, for those that don't like pool cleaning, is not going to do well. But if you talk about, not to get political, but like the Epstein files, it's like, that's what's trendy right now. Like that makes sense. And so people that do that usually can have a couple of clips that, blow up or do well. There's, for some reason, again, I don't want to like promote these things, but, relationship talks, like we've had a couple of podcasters do well with that, or, talking about reality TV shows or things like that, which again is like for me, but other people enjoy. True crime, I think, does well kind of organically a little bit better. But, again, I think that people will sometimes look at views and feel like, oh, this didn't get as much. And, again, let's just, Instagram aside, YouTube, right? I only got 50 views, 100 views on this podcast. It's like, if one or two of those people watched that whole thing through and was like just stoked and chomping at the bit for more, like, I think you'd be more excited about that. I think we're just in a day and age where like you can, everybody gets 300 views on a reel just organically, just, people probably don't even watch it, but like YouTube videos. And if you get someone to enjoy the long form, like, there's value to that. There's some good stuff that comes from that. And it's an indication that you're doing well. And that even goes back to my former point of like, people want to, it's got to be 30 minutes. I'm like, dude, if you talked for 2 hours, I bet you some of these people would be like still listening. And so, don't be overly strategic and kind of, miss the mark on those that could really benefit from that. And again, I think it's different for everybody, but as a business, it's like I would rather have qualified people that are, really interested and are actually going to like, really get ingrained in it than like have so many people that watched 5 minutes of it, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. So just since we're getting close to the end of time, man, I'd love to know, like, I kind of want to talk about two different buckets. Actually, I feel like we have talked a bit about like advice for people who are starting a podcast. A lot of the things you've already said are like, man, please like have a good idea, have an audience in mind, those sorts of things. But in terms of those who already have a podcast, are there things you like? I love the newsletter you put out, and you talk about different things. You talk about AI, like all these different things. What are things you think that current, I'll just call them creators, are they already have a show? What are things that you think they should be paying attention to as they're creating their show?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different routes to take that. But I guess, I think from AI is a very, trendy word right now too, but I think it boils down to just like technology, right? Whereas, 10 years ago, producing a video podcast with multiple cameras would have been, significantly, the barrier to entry would have been a lot worse. It's easier now. And, going back to the point that there's a lot of unfun stuff with podcasting, like back in the day, taking a transcript, making your own show notes, making your own this, that, and everything. AI makes it a lot easier. If you're not an editor, you could take the file that we give you, upload it to Opus, and have it spit out a whole bunch of clips for you. And you could even, edit them a little bit within there. Riverside offers something, similar too. It's the barrier to entry as well as the like tools at your fingertips have never been as vast as they are now. And so, I think similar to the internet popping off, there are people that were like, this is witchcraft. This is who knows about this. Like, I think there's the same feeling with a lot of AI products. And I think, for most people that are in, tech or cameras and stuff like that, we appreciate that. I think there's naturally a fear of AI taking our jobs and, whatever. But for those that I feel like have embodied it, it's doing a lot for the industry and making a solo person or, if you don't have the expertise to do some of these other things, this makes it easier. Again, you could, through Riverside, I'm sure at the end of this thing, you will have not a transcript, you'll have title suggestions, you'll have a recap, you'll have timestamps, and that's all done through AI, which is just saving people a whole bunch of time and making what would have been maybe 5 hours of back end work 2 or 1 now. And so I think, pay attention to that sort of stuff. Luckily, things are still pretty cheap, where again, like, I don't know how much it is for Opus, but not much a month. And it's like, definitely do that, and or whatever, and chop things up that way. What other sort of, tech related stuff? Was the question more about tech, or was it about opportunities?
No, it could just be in general, like things that like you're seeing that there's
things that are
trends,
working,
but
I guess.
yeah, just like, hey, as you're creating your show, we should always be growing and changing, right? And so like, what should current podcasters be thinking about just in general?
I think, which has been a little bit of a theme here, is going back to the preparation. We see plenty of people that spend a lot of time on their logo. They spend a lot of time on this and that. They got a brand new outfit for this. They booked the studio. They came early. They did all this sort of stuff. And then when they actually start asking questions, it's like, I hate the like, so tell us about yourself. It's like, you should have researched this person. You should know what to ask. And then for the people that do get asked, or do interviews often enough, there's nothing worse, I'm sure, than like getting the kind of routine questions. And so I think there's usually a lack of preparation around or lack of effort when it goes to like actually just being a good host and actually being a good podcaster. And again, I think while it is easy, you're essentially just talking, there have been plenty of times where it's like, this was a good interview. You can tell that both of the people were really, in it. And the guest, he had been asked some questions, or they had been asked some questions that they hadn't been asked before. Like, it caught them off guard in a good way, and I think it makes it more memorable for them while they're physically sitting there, as well as I think for those watching, it's a little bit more like, oh yeah, this was like interesting. Again, I think we've all seen one thing that makes a show like Hot Ones unique is it kind of takes the seriousness and the routineness of interviews with celebrities to a different level, and so you get to kind of see them in a different way. The questions are always very, I don't want to say always very, but they're a little bit more outside of the box. They're a little bit different, and then you kind of pair it with the kind of activity that they're doing. It makes for better television, and so I think it's all too common where I see people just come in and it's like question, answer, and question, answer, and again, depending on what you're trying to do, there's a time and place for that. But again, if you're especially just maybe it's just two of the hosts always the same time, it's like you really should work on communicating with each other, not talking over each other, just the flow of things in general. We've seen experienced and inexperienced people come in and interview people, and I'm always impressed when somebody can, again, think a little bit more outside of the box. So for my advice to every podcaster, business, individual, whatever, is learn how to do your job, get better about it. Watch other ones, see what they do, learn how to navigate a conversation in a more fluid way than, just a kind of standard way. And I think that will translate into a better show overall.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I know one thing I'm trying to do, like I feel like we've got the production piece of podcasting down, right? It's like we understand that piece. I'm actually, part of the reason why I'm even doing my own show is I'm actually trying to get better at being a host. And so I'm like seeing all these different ways where I'm like, oh, I'm not so great at that. And so like, I'm actually like, as I go to edit my show, I'm like, oh, I need to start doing this differently, and just making sure you're reviewing kind of your own content and seeing like, okay, what are the ways you don't like that, or get a third party opinion and be like, what's annoying, right? What are the things I do that like aren't so great that could actually trip up my audience or whatever?
That is huge.
I think, yeah.
I want to put a quick, just I'll underline that for you too, is I think there's so many people that don't even listen to their own show afterwards. And obviously you were there for it, so I get it. But at some point too, it's like, we quick side stories. Like we had, this couple that would come in and they do these podcasts, and we did, I don't know, a whole bunch of episodes. We were always kind of surprised because they were one of those people that like, yeah, it was kind of a niche thing. They were a little long-winded. It was a little like, and it was, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of episodes through until he was like, oh, I actually just like finally decided to watch one through and like, we want to improve this. We want to do this. We want to do that. I'm like, dude, what were you doing? Like,
Right.
I mean, and again, everybody always asks us our opinions, but again, as business owners and people that do this, it's like, it's hard to look at someone in the face and be like, yeah, like, oh yeah, what'd you think? Was that interesting? And be like, no, it actually wasn't. And I think you really need a whole lot to work on. Like, it doesn't make, it's not a good move, not a good look. I don't gas people up for no reason, but it's like, yeah, you should watch your stuff back. That's, I think, you'll learn a whole lot from seeing what you did. If you don't even find it interesting enough to like maybe watch back and check, then probably everybody else is feeling the same.
Right. Oh, that's a bar. That was very helpful. All right. I have two final questions. Inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So what podcasts, whether it's the production of it, the content of it, whatever, what are the podcasts you are looking to right now that kind of inspire you right now?
Yeah, I saw this.
Maybe that's too strong of a word, but
no. You're fine. I feel like unfortunately I'll have just the answer that you probably didn't want though. It's and again going back to what I was talking about before is like everyone's like, oh, you got a podcast, dude. You must be like a big podcast guy, and it's, I don't want to say not the case, but maybe it's just, again, we also do it for a living, and so it's like usually I like a little bit of silence on my way home now. But what inspires me? I think I'm almost a bad person to ask because I look at a podcast or I see clips and I'm like, what kind of camera they use? What is the shooting in the background?
So you
like,
get
that's a different composition. I'm looking at it for the wrong things sometimes.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of like what podcasts I listen to. For a lot of people it'd be big, snoozing stuff, but I like business related stuff, although it is, a bit dry, and there's definitely times where I'm like, we're going to go with music on this walk. But as an entrepreneur and someone that's always, I guess, enjoyed and found value in what the, market would consider like self-help type stuff, or just like, boring corporate business stuff, is like, that's what I like usually. So I like listening to that sort of stuff. Again, someone that has a higher threshold for production. If your show sucks, like I'm not going to watch it, or I will in some ways think less of you. So
Yes,
those that are,
right.
the big podcasts like anyone else. And I feel bad because, again, it's like someone that helps the little guy, I don't want to be like, oh, I like all the really well produced professional podcasts, but it's like, it does help. And I'm sure you guys have seen the same kind of news and information that I have, but podcasting is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think that it's going to be more and more common to see, like, I would consider like ultra high production podcasts put together. Netflix is spending a lot of money, hosting other podcasts and stuff like that. And so I think that the threshold of, again, with that, what's acceptable, what looks good, is going to continue to rise. And so I put a value in that. Two, I guess, again, as someone that just listens to podcasts for work quite a bit, and then in my own time, I have very little time. I luckily live right by our studio. I'll listen to stuff sometimes when I walk the dog, but I don't have long commutes. I'm not on like the train going into work. And then also when I get home, I usually, maybe if I'm like cooking or something like that, but there's very little time that I find myself, maybe on a plane, able to sit down and like really enjoy something. So again, bad person to answer this, just because like I don't listen to so much, but the ones that I do enjoy, and I think will do well are going to be the ones that continue to have, I think notable guests obviously matter too. Like if I have no idea who this is, like it's tougher to get through, but if there's somebody I'm like, oh, I've never seen an interview from them, or like I've always wanted to hear, those are the ones that I usually would turn into a little bit more. And I guess even going back to Hot Ones, where it's like, I don't know if Hot Ones is considered a podcast or more of a show. I enjoy some sort of visual element, if not some sort of like, not act, but some sort of some other little thing to it, I suppose. I think long form podcasts are great. I'd love it if it had a little bit of an activity to some degree, or something a little unique about it, some sort of theme. I tend to enjoy those a little bit more.
I love that. Okay, cool. All right, this is just a random question based off of something you said earlier.
Okay.
What is your favorite watch and why?
That's a good question.
Like, and if you don't have a favorite, like, what's one of the favorite watches?
Yeah. So I would consider it my grail piece is a Vacheron Constantin dual time Everest edition. It's a very limited watch and very expensive. So we'll see if I can ever get to that. But I love that. I think I've always been into watches when I was younger, and before I had the ability to get some like cooler ones. I definitely would not consider myself like a super watch snob. The guy that works for me, Luke, and a former employee too. I kind of got them on the watch bug. They would see me come in all the times with something, and that's a little bit of my love language. And so he'd been killing it lately, and I helped him with the purchase of some watch that, again, maybe wouldn't be necessarily on my radar, but like when he got it, he was just so excited. I brought it in and was so happy about it, and I love that sort of thing. I'm kind of big on marking some sort of event with it. I'm getting married in a couple of weeks, and I'm hoping to close the deal on something that would help solidify that memory a little bit more. I'm open to all brands. I have quite a few different watches, and I think just like anything else in life, there's always a little bit of something, irrespective of price, that I can find pleasure and joy out of. And I would consider myself a car guy too, but cars are really tough to maintain, get in and out of. They lose value in a crazy fashion, whereas watches, if done well, aren't as volatile, and you get to enjoy them and kind of wear them. And so I've transitioned that slightly more expensive hobby of cars into watches, because you can store a lot of them in a tiny little box. You can wear them every single day and know that you're not going to completely lose your shirt the second it gets walked out of the store. But the Vacheron Everest would be my number one. But I enjoy a lot of things. I'm trying to think, and obviously everybody knows Rolex, right? While I'm a Rolex enjoyer, I would not ride that bandwagon as hard as everybody else would be. I think there's plenty of people that that's their first watch and maybe only watch. They buy their Submariner and they're like, I made it, which is totally cool. But Rolex can sometimes appeal to it's like the Starbucks of watches to some degree. So
I'm tracking. Okay. Awesome.
Are you a watch guy at all?
Well, I'm not. Okay. I have an Apple Watch, so you know what I mean? So I know. I have thought about, I've thought about, because my Apple Watch is also getting old, so I'm like, man, should I just go back to like a normal watch?
You should.
So anyways, but the watches I do like definitely have like a bigger face for sure, and
okay.
Maybe it's just because I'm blind and I need that. But anyways,
you're all right. It's all about wrist size. There are some watches. Before I knew anything about watches, they'd put the sizes. I'm like, just look at like how it looks, right? But the size really does matter. And so I don't know quite your build, but if you have a bigger wrist, you need to get a bigger watch. There's plenty of great watches that I unfortunately could not rock that I would if it was possible. But sometimes they don't make them in every size.
Man, yeah, that's interesting. Now I have to look up this watch. So, anyways, Tom, thank you so much. This was awesome. Like your expertise in this area has been a huge blessing to my business partner and I, and I'm stoked for my audience to like hear the things you've been saying. I think having somebody who has recorded, like you were saying, hundreds and hundreds of episodes and been in this space, and the unofficial / official godfather of podcast studios in the United States. And so having your expertise has been so helpful. And I just really appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hope, I know that this conversation geared probably towards, podcasters in general, and it's not as business focused. Whereas, again, I'm happy to stick around for a couple minutes after the call too. But hopefully what I was able to, tell you from my experience about what I see successful people do in the space will be helpful to your audience and anyone else that wants to get into podcasting. We're both in the business of trying to get people into podcasting. And so hopefully what I've talked about today will be good for them. And I just want to say thank you guys for making the time in your calendar. As you said, I think off camera here, I'm a proponent for the industry just as a whole, and whatever I can do to help support other entrepreneurs in the studio space, as well as just everyday podcasters, hopefully get more out of it than they would before. I'm happy to do.
Hey, if you're getting any value out of this conversation, would you please like, subscribe, rate, review, share this video, do all the things, and get the word out about this podcast. We are really trying to help podcasters like you, brand builders like you, use video podcasts in the best way possible. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust, and we will see you next time.